Are you thinking about the beginning of 2025 yet? Are you thinking about maybe resolutions? It's such an icky word, but things that maybe you want to change in your life? Maybe some habits that you would like to stop? Well, I invite you to think about picking up a copy of my book, Empower Your Magical Self, with a 1-month habit break. That's what the topic of this show is about today. Welcome to the second season of Empower Your Magical Self. I'm your host, Leah Wellborn, the Mystic Autistic. I created this podcast because I used to be very, very sad. In fact, for decades, I hated being alive. In 2020, I was touched by grace and I decided to live in joy no matter what that took. The result? I empowered my magical self. Along the way, I was diagnosed as autistic at the age of 48. I also became a Reiki healer and an ordained minister. My mission now is to continue to empower my magical self and to help you empower your magical self, whoever and wherever you may be. In each episode, I'll be talking with someone who has helped me empower my magical self. I'll ask them about the experiences in their lives that have shaped them, and I'll ask each guest to answer one question. What is magic? Join me for all 13 episodes of Empower Your Magical Self, Season 2. Welcome to the 11th episode of Empower Your Magical Self. I'm Leah, your host. I'm the Mystic Autistic. And today I have a very special episode of Empower Your Magical Self. I don't have a guest today, and that's by design. It's not because anybody stood me up or anything. I have a kind of a guest, but it's not a human guest. It's a book. It's my book. It's a book I wrote recently. It's a small book, as you can see. Perhaps more of a booklet even. It's called Empower Your Magical Self, just like this show. Empower Your Magical Self with a 1-month habit break. A handbook for reclaiming sovereignty in 30 days. So let's back away from the book a little bit. Let's just talk about habits. Habits are such a huge part of our lives, whether they're good or they're bad. And that brings me to another point, because I'm going to try to refrain for the time that we're together from saying a particular habit is good or bad. Because the whole thing for me, the system that I've created, that I used to quit 3 habits that were kind of ruling my life, I call it the program for the rest of this show. The program is what we're talking about in this book. So this program is about quitting a habit that is standing in the way of your joy. A habit that is keeping you from being sovereign. When you're sovereign, you know that you're the one who's in control of making your choices, that you're the one who's in control of how you respond to situations, that you don't react to things, you don't fly off the handle. It's a hard one. That you maintain your center through your life, that you're sovereign. So when I was engaging in, for instance, these 3 habits, particularly 2 of them that I'll talk about, one of them was drinking every day, drinking a couple of bottles of wine every day. The other habit that had a huge drain on my time and energy was watching news. I had the news on basically 10, 12 hours a day, just absorbing everything that was going on. I had gotten myself into a mindset that I thought, I have to do this. To be a responsible citizen, I have to know all these things. That was a lie that I was telling myself, because I needed to keep indulging that habit, which I could call a bad habit, but for a while, it served a certain purpose. Just like the booze, there came to be a point where I said to myself, self, this is keeping us from being happy and from functioning at our best. And it brings up another funny point when I say like that, self. I'm just kidding, kind of, because another big point in the project, this book that I wrote, is that we're all made up of disparate selves. Sometimes we think of ourselves as just one self. I'm the Mystic Autistic. I'm Leah. Yeah, but that encompasses a lot of different selves. That encompasses a very rageful and angry inner teenager who is not necessarily Leah, but she's part of Leah. It encompasses a very hurt and vulnerable little child who was abused by her father. It encompasses the part of me that wants to please the teacher. I mean, there's a lot of different selves, right? My point being that generally it's one part of ourselves, one of those splintered off selves that developed this habit that is now standing in the way of our joy. The part of myself that wanted to be a good student, to know the answers, to be smart, that part got addicted to cable news. And cable news became a huge drain. Not just cable news, any news. Being that absorbed in something that I wasn't even really, it wasn't my job. It was just an obsession. It was draining my energy. It was making me look at the world in a weird way. I had to get away from it. So I used this program to stop that and to stop drinking coffee, which was a less big deal in my life, and to stop drinking booze, which was a huge big deal in my life. Nonetheless, I'm going to try to refrain from saying those were bad habits. When we talk about the program today, and in general, when I talk about the program, I'm going to try not to call them bad habits because that's very moralistic and that's not what we're doing here. What we're doing here is just trying to reconcile why we develop these habits and why it's time to either take a break from the habit or break up from the habit permanently, and how we can do that while supporting ourselves and not bullying ourselves. So that's basically what the project is about. So this is the book. It's called Empower Your Magical Self with a 1-Month Habit Break, a handbook for reclaiming sovereignty in 30 days. And it's available on Amazon as a Kindle book or as a paperback. You can also get it on the TikTok shop. If you get it on the TikTok shop, it will be signed with an inscription from me, the author. Each of the methods, the tools, the exercises that are in the project are based on one of several different categories of thinking or ideas or scientific knowledge. And each of those have been avenues down which I've dived pretty deeply and areas that have helped me immensely. So here's a breakdown on what each of those areas are. Each of those methodologies or areas of thought are. In no particular order, the methods we'll be using are mindfulness and intentionality. Most of us live the majority of our lives on autopilot. That's the habit of it all, and bringing more mindful intentionality to our lives is the solution. How many times have you gotten to a destination to which you drove and have little to no memory of how you got there? It's kind of unsettling, isn't it? Or maybe someone says something offhandedly that lands in a hurtful way for you. I didn't mean it like that, they protest. Well, how did they mean it? When we endeavor to only say things we mean, thoughtfully, and with intention, we avoid unnecessarily hurting people, maybe especially ourselves, by acting in hurtful ways simply because we're not paying attention. Often, our habits can be disrupted by a dose of intentionality. Throughout the project, I'll present prompts and exercises to help you build your mindfulness and intentionality. The second method we'll be using is somatics. Soma is the Greek word for body, and somatics deals with the body, particularly as distinct from what we generally think of as the soul or the mind. Somatic techniques are tools for working on your inner world through your body, your soma. A lot of us are very disconnected from our bodies and tend to think of them as dumb machines to do with as we like. But the body, as they say, keeps the score. Whatever unresolved trauma or other grinding issue we hold, regardless of when it happened or how disconnected it seems from the body, is carried in the body, and it manifests in pain and illness and inflammation and so many other things that we tend to think of as utterly distinct from our mental and emotional lives. Somatic techniques aim to release that trauma gently through physical exercises that work in our inner world through the outside. Throughout this book, I'll be presenting somatic practices to help with your habit break. Ideally, you'll carry the ones that work for you into the rest of your life. Polyvagal theory. The vagus nerve is the longest nerve in the body, and it makes up the bulk of the parasympathetic nervous system. It touches every organ in the body, thus vagus comes from the same root as vagrant. It wanders around touching everything. And when it's dysregulated, havoc can and usually will ensue throughout the body that reverberates throughout your life. Polyvagal theory investigates the cause and effect relationship at the root of the aforementioned havoc. It does that by looking at the nervous system, particularly the autonomic nervous system, or the ANS, as a key factor in how people respond or react to cues from both within and without themselves. For our purposes here, let's think of the nervous system as two branches. There's the sympathetic branch, which sounds very nice and friendly, but is really the branch that's responsible for keeping us alive in emergencies. It's the flight or fight branch, and it's crucial to survival, but it's also the home of stress and anxiety, not a comfy place to dwell. On the other hand, we have the parasympathetic branch, which is really the place to be. That's where we rest and digest, and it's where we're meant to live when we're not actively engaged in mortal combat. The problem comes when the two branches get out of whack or dysregulated, which for some of us becomes sort of a standard state of being. Considering that we have the same brain and nervous system as our distant cave people ancestors, getting out of whack is easily done. The world we now reside in simply doesn't match the one that humans succeeded in for hundreds of thousands of years. This modern life is extremely new in the scale of time, and it's freaking a lot of us out. A lot. A huge part of my personal recovery has been learning how to self-regulate. I'll share a lot of those methods here. The next method we'll be using is self-directed neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity refers to the fact that our brains and the information they store are not set in stone, even when we're adults. Self-directed neuroplasticity is what we're doing here on the project, taking charge of rewiring the neural channels for our benefit. Actively changing the way we do things, or even think about things, literally changes the structure of our brains. There are billions of neurons in your brain, and when you take in new information or change up the way you do things, you're changing the shape of your brain. Throughout the project, I'll be sharing tips to reshape your brain in a way that better fits your intentions. The next method we'll be using is energy work and metaphysics. Energy is everything. Matter is simply energy that's been slowed down to the degree that its movement is imperceptible to our human eye. That's not just a bunch of woo-woo. It's also the word of eminent scientific minds like Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla. And that's the philosophy behind my personal use and inclusion here of this category of thought. It's all energy. It's all subtly, or not so subtly, connected. It's all energy. It's all subtly, or not so subtly, connected. And we don't understand it all, but that doesn't mean it doesn't work. Think of it this way. We didn't understand electricity until fairly recently in human history, but that doesn't mean it didn't work exactly as it does now before we understood it. This work of becoming the person you want to be is difficult. It may be the most difficult and worthwhile work you'll ever undertake. Why not try every possible method and technique, then keep using the ones that work for you? I'll be presenting a smattering of metaphysical topics throughout the project, and I ask you to keep an open mind about them, especially if that's not your inclination. But I'll remind you that you certainly don't have to understand something in order for it to work. By the same token, you don't necessarily have to believe in something for it to be somehow helpful to you, do you? The last method we'll be using here is Jungian psychology. Carl Jung was a Swiss philosopher who is considered one of the fathers of modern psychology. He was responsible for a lot of groundbreaking ideas, and I encourage you to look further into his work if you're intrigued. Two of his major ideas are at play here in the project. One of them is the idea of the shadow, or the repressed parts of the psyche, as opposed to the persona, which is the mask we show to the public. The other is his notion of the role of archetypes, like the hero, the mother, the teacher, etc., in shaping our psyches and worldviews. We'll be specifically working with his ideas when we talk about shadow work on day 19 and tarot on day 23. So how the book works is it's broken into weeks, obviously 4 weeks, because it's a month project. So the first week is called excavation. And it's called that because this week, every day is a different journaling prompt and a different way to really get in touch with why it is that you started this habit, what it was that part of you was searching for, trying to serve in this habit, and then how can you take a break from that habit or break that habit in a way that is healthy for your whole self? In this first week, every day has a different prompt to help you do that. Day one is committing to yourself. So that's writing a little bit of a promise to yourself, to all of yourselves. Day two is clarity on your motivation to stop. So what is it that this habit is causing problems within your life, and what would be better if you stopped? Day three is clarity on why you started your habit. So for me, I started drinking. I'll say that. We'll talk about that habit in this show. I started drinking when I was a teenager because I wanted to feel wild and rebellious. I was undiagnosed autistic. I was an unhappy child, an unhappy teenager, and I felt some freedom and some release in drinking. And it became a habit that held me back eventually. Went on for many, many, many years, but it's okay. I'm on the other side of it now. On day four, it's clarity on your goals, setting yourself up for success. So, what is it that you're looking for in the month? Are you wanting to go the entire month without engaging in the habit at all? Are you looking to, in the future, completely quit the habit altogether? Are you thinking maybe just taking a break from it would suffice? Are you wanting to maybe to cut back on the habit? These are all things that you'll investigate on day four, clarity on your goals, setting yourself up for success. Then on day five, you talk about clarity of on your triggers, protecting your energy. So this is recognizing the things that are going to make you want to engage in your habit, going to make that part of you who is so in love with that habit come out and want to take control. So for me, maybe it was a very, very bad day, or on the other hand, a very, very good day. Just identifying those little parts of you that are liable to get triggered and make you want to reach out for that habit, whether it's doom scrolling social media or drinking or smoking, whatever habit that you really want to try to get a handle on. On day six, we take a revised oath. So we take the oath that you took on the first day to yourself to really treat yourself with respect and to honor your efforts. And then on day six, we integrate everything that we learned from the journaling on the days in between and write a revised, more informed uh, oath to ourselves and promise. And on day seven, we look at morning rituals and how a morning ritual might serve you in your life. By the second week, perhaps you're starting to get a little edgy. I know I was. And starting to think, maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I can't do this. Maybe just rethinking. So this is the week that I've included tools. Every day of the second week has a different tool, has a different physical concrete tool that you can do right then to help you avoid whatever your habit is that you're trying to engage with. I again use drinking because that was the habit that I used the project to get over. Um, and the idea here is that every day just gives you a glimpse at a different habit that you might want to incorporate into your daily life. So it's sort of a smorgasbord, if you will, of different tools that you can use. And maybe some work for you, maybe some don't. Maybe they all work for you. Who knows? They all work for me. That's why I included them all. The first day of week 2, day 8 of the entire project is meditation. Day 9 is breath work, really engaging in your body, in the process of the breath and how that can help you calm your body and your mind. Um, Day 10 is bilateral stimulation, which is the most groovy thing that I had never heard of before I started this whole project. And it's a great way to help you deal with a dysregulated nervous system. And the idea is that you're you want to engage your nervous system and calm your nervous system bilaterally on both sides of your brain. So there are some exercises in this book for on day 10, bilateral stimulation, but I'm going to show you such an easy one right now. So if you're feeling dysregulated, you're feeling dysregulated, an easy thing to do, cross your thumbs like this over your chest and just tap, alternating hands. That's it. Go on doing whatever else you're doing. and just let that do its thing. It's weird, these little tricks. This book is full of little tricks like this that I've learned from all of my studies and wellness and self-improvement, evolving and quitting habits. Day 11 is another couple of funny little tricks that are similar to bilateral stimulation that are so odd and that they're so easy to do and they're so effective. Shaking, physically shaking on purpose, and humming. Just whatever you want to hum. Those both help to regulate your nervous system. And a lot of this project, a lot of this book is about nervous system regulation and being able to regulate yourself without having to reach for that habit that has become problematic for you. Day 12 is tapping. It's also called the emotional freedom technique. It's so simple and it's so odd, and it's part of my morning ritual that I do every day. And it's very simple. You could say it with a script, which you would write yourself regarding your habit. Could be something about not drinking. And you simply tap at the different parts here where I am tapping. These are points that correspond with meridians, like in the Chinese medicine system. And repeatedly tapping on them can do wonders for regulating your nervous system. And again, you could have a script while you say them. So you could say something like, even though I'm craving a drink, I completely love and accept myself. Because the idea that you're trying to really get into your nervous system and into your brain is that it's okay. And you're not bullying yourself. You completely love and accept yourself, even though some things are coming up that perhaps you're not thrilled with. Yeah. So the book goes into detail into how to use tapping in your own life to overcome, deal with whatever you are struggling with, whether it be a habit or some other problem in your life. Tapping is an excellent and very easy, obviously free way to do that. So I encourage you to look into tapping. And one way to look into tapping is to get my book. It's a tool that's included in week 2. Day 13 is dancing. What? I know. I am a person who has always loved dancing, and I love dancers and I love watching dancing, but I'm very clumsy and I'm uncoordinated and I've never been able to follow choreography. So I felt thwarted. I felt like I was the victim in my life because I couldn't dance, because I couldn't follow choreography. I say to that, humbug. I don't need anybody's choreography to dance. I can just turn on music and dance. I don't even have to have music. I can have music in my head and dance. And that's a very good example of having sovereignty in my life, right? I used to have no sovereignty in that arena because I said, oh, I can't dance. I'm not able to. I can't keep a beat. I don't like the way people look at me because I feel silly and I just don't like it. And ew. Okay, so I was giving up all of my power on that. Even though I love to dance, that's very sad. So what do I do now? Do I try to follow choreography? Do I beat myself up because I can't do it? Hell to the no. I turn on music that I like, whatever I feel like at the day time, and I just dance in my room. I have a mini trampoline. I have a little aerial yoga set up, and I just tear it up. A couple of times a day, I do that for 20 or so minutes a day. That's gold. Sometimes it's more like 10 minutes. But that's how I exercise, and that's how I keep my sanity in a lot of ways. So that is day 13, dancing as release. Perhaps it's something that you could incorporate in your life too to help you not just overcome whatever habit you're dealing with, but whatever problems you have in your life. It's really remarkable what being engaged with your body in such a way, like just freely dancing, it's remarkable what it can do for you. And then on day 14, we have a review of week 2. So look at all the different tools, figure out what's worked, what hasn't worked, try to figure out where we are in the project, halfway through the project at this point. How's it doing? How are we doing? How's it going? Are we maintaining the goal? Are we straying a little bit? And just a day 14 will help us shore ourselves up and realize that wherever we are, even if we haven't been doing the things that would set up as goals for ourselves to do, or we have been doing the things we've set up for goals not to do, it's okay. Because this is an effort. This is a project, and it's a big, important project, and we need to be kind to ourselves and give ourselves grace while we're working on it. Now, week 3 is called ideas. And week 3 goes deeper into the ideas behind the tools, and it gives some maybe philosophical, but that sounds a little too much because these are just little bite-sized bits of knowledge and ideas that can help you rewire your brain in such a way that all of this becomes easier. Life becomes easier. So on day 15, we talk about who's in charge here, multiple selves. So that's that idea that I mentioned earlier about how none of us are a monolith. We're all made up of different parts of ourselves, the ego self and the little child, the angry teenager, the inner critic, all these different parts that are very distinct from one another and are often very antithetical to one another. They're all in competition, and sometimes they can get really loud. So that's what day 15 is about. Day 16 is about Reiki principles. And I'm a Reiki healer, but even if you don't ever get a Reiki healing or work with a Reiki healer like me, you can follow the Reiki principles. They're very simple and straightforward. And if you follow the Reiki principles, I don't want to give you a guarantee, but can pretty much say for sure that you're going to have a better time of it in life. And day 16 introduces those principles. So the 5 principles of Reiki are: just for today, I will not engage in anger. That doesn't mean you won't get angry. You just are not going to stay there. You're not going to engage in it. Just for today, I will not worry. Just for today, I will be grateful. Just for today, I will do my life's work honestly. And just for today, I will be kind to every living being. Goals, right? Those are all goals. And I would love to say that I follow every one of them every day. But I get tripped up. Of course I do. But those are the goals that I try to live by. And I recommend at least trying a day of living by them and see if perhaps they don't improve your life a little bit. Day 17 is about building an altar. Um, I have several altars in my home. I have found that having an altar really gives me a wonderful place to physically work on my intentions and what I want to do with my life and with my future, with these days I have here on this planet. So it doesn't have to be a big religious or even spiritual thing. You can be an atheist and still have an altar because it's about your dedication and your focus. And day 17 talks about that. Day 18 is about housebreaking your ego. A lot of people talk about killing their egos, and I think that that's kind of silly. I think of an ego as a guard dog, and if it's not trained well, it's going to wreak havoc, just like an untrained guard dog would. So the best, most healthy thing that we can do in regard to our ego is training it to have it in service to us and in service to our higher goals, and not just running around barking madly at everything, because that's a good way to dwell in your habits. Believe me, I've been there. Day 19 is about shadow work, which is a Jungian concept. I talk often about Jungian psychology in the project. And shadow work is about getting to know the parts of yourself that are maybe ones that you don't really want to have seen out in the public. Maybe the parts of yourself that are really quick to anger. That's one of my things. I have to really work on that. That's part of my shadow. But instead of shaming my shadow and trying to hide my shadow, I try to ask her out for a cup of tea and talk about what's going on and how can she and I integrate better and work better in the world. And that's what day 19 is about. Day 20 is about living by a soul lit. And that's what I try to do rather than living by any kind of diet. I like to just live by a soul lit, meaning that I try endeavor to only do things that light my soul on fire. And it's a great way to help me stay on track with my values and the things that are important to me in life, and to minimize the habits that are getting in the way of my joy. On day 21, we review week 3, take a moment to think about and journal about what has happened in week 3 that might be worth carrying into the future. Week 4, I call going deep. And it's the more kind of metaphysical woo stuff that really is the most important to me. It's the stuff that mostly lights my soul on fire. But you don't have to be into this stuff to get into the project. You don't even have to carry any of that outside of the project. But I would ask you, if you're going to engage with a project, to think about the things that I say in week 4 and the different methods and exercises that you will encounter in week 4, because maybe something will work for you to going forward. And even if these things are like stuff you're really engaged with all the time, like I am, still I ask that you engage with each day's exercise with fresh eyes and try to think about how the information presented interacts with the habit that you're trying to work on. So in day 22, calling up backups, that's working with your spirit guides. And that has been such a boon to me in my life. Day 22, I talk about Mork and Mindy in terms of my spirit guides and how Mork would call on Orson. And that's a metaphor that I find to be really useful when it's talking about how my spirit guides and I work together and how I look up to them and how they guide me. I have a guided meditation, speaking of guiding, on this topic that's on Insight Timer, and I will put a link to that. It's free. It's a free guided meditation, and perhaps it will help you, because being in touch with my spirit guides has been the single most helpful thing that I've ever done in my life. Day 23, we talk about tarot cards and how it's not just about divination. It is about archetypes and about working with that Jungian psychology of the archetypes, and how sitting and working with the cards and meditating on the cards can help you open up doors in your mind and access parts that perhaps you aren't usually accessible to you. Day 24, I talk about astrology. Speaking of astrology, next week, there's a really great astrologer, Kyla Price, Star Lady Hedge, is going to be my guest, and we'll talk about astrology. It's excellent, underrated method for helping you help yourself. For instance, I can tell you a very good for instance. I'm a Sagittarius sun. So that's the sign that people would say I am a Sagittarius. I was born on December 15th, so I'm a Sagittarius, right? Well, I went most of my life thinking, kind of sounds like me. Kind of doesn't. Then I discovered that my rising sign and my moon sign, particularly my rising sign, had so much more import in my life and in how things played out than my sun sign. My rising sign is Aries. Boy, did that resonate with me. Now, my sun, my rising, and my moon are all fire. Got Sagittarius and Aries and Aries. That is so much fire. And that made so much sense to me. And suddenly I was able to see my literal heat. My physical body is usually really hot. I have hyperhidrosis. I sweat profusely. Anytime my body is dysregulated, I sweat. My hands sweat profusely. Knowing that I was a triple fire helped me make sense of my drinking habit. I was trying to quench on some level that fire. So just to say, astrology is not all just about your horoscopes in the paper, right? It's about understanding yourself. So that's what day 24 is. Day 25 is about spells and about how everything that we do and say is a spell. The spell, or to cast a spell, is just to assert your intention that something will happen. So when you say, oh, that'll never happen, you're casting a spell. So day 25 asks you to think intentionally about what you say and what you put out into the world. Day 26 is about prayer. It works in a similar vein. Day 27 is the week in review. So the last 3 days is wrapping up. Day 28, 29, and 30. It's a review. So in those days, you'll look back at the promise, the oath that you made to yourself at the beginning of the month, and you'll look at the distance you come between the two. You reevaluate your relationship with the habit that you've been working on and see if it's something that you want to carry into the future, you want to stop completely forever. Just reevaluate your relationship with it and take a look back at all of the different methods and tools you've learned and figure out what will be helpful for you going forward. Thank you so much for being with me here today and listening to some thoughts about habits and about how you can take a break from one or even break up with one if you want to. Again, this is my book, Empower Your Magical Self with a 1-Month Habit Break, a handbook for reclaiming sovereignty in 30 days. If you would like to get yourself a copy, it's available on Amazon and in the TikTok shop. In the TikTok shop, you would get an autographed copy if you order it there. Also, I will be at Sakala in Denver. It's not my event, but I'll just happen to be there tomorrow, Thursday, December 12th in the morning with some other folks. And I'll have a few copies of my book there if you'd like to be there and meet my guest from last week, Megan Rubenstein, as well. I hope that you will come back next week and meet the aforementioned astrologer extraordinaire, Kyla Price, Star Lady Hedge. Mwah! I love this woman. She is so brilliant. We've become friends from TikTok, like so many of my other guests. And she'll be here to talk about astrology and magic and life and being autistic and all of that good stuff. So I hope that you get out there and empower your magical self. And if there is a habit that you engage in that you would rather not engage in, maybe it's a good time to think about pulling the plug on that habit, taking a break from it or breaking up with it. So get out there and empower your magical self. And I will see you back here next week. I love you. Bye.